This is 255 BC. Rome and Carthage are deep into the First Punic War, fighting over who controls the sea between them, and Rome just got its worst news of the whole conflict. A Roman army invaded Carthage's home territory in North Africa the year before, and for a while it actually worked. Then Carthage brought in a Spartan mercenary named Xanthippus, who reorganized their army around war elephants and heavy cavalry and used them to crush the Romans in open field, the elephants alone breaking apart formations that had never faced them before. Their commander, a consul named Regulus, got cornered and captured. What was left of his men, a couple thousand soldiers, were trapped on a beach at a town called Aspis, surrounded, running out of food, waiting to either be starved out or overrun. Back in Rome, the news lands like a gut punch. The consul who led the invasion of Africa is gone, and the men he left behind are next. So Rome does the only thing it can do. It builds the biggest fleet it has ever put in the water, something like 350 warships, and sends it across the Mediterranean to go get them. Not to win the war, just to save the men who are still breathing. And for a few days, the plan actually works. The fleet reaches North Africa, meets a Carthaginian squadron trying to block the rescue near Cape Hermaeum, and wins fast, capturing more than 100 enemy ships without much of a fight. That single win pushes the size of the Roman fleet past 400 vessels. They pick up the survivors at Aspis, load them onto the newly captured hulls alongside their own crews, and turn for home with the largest, most successful navy Rome has ever put together. Therefore, the two consuls in command, Paulus and Nobilior, decide this is the moment to make a statement. Instead of sailing straight back to Italy, they point the fleet along the southern coast of Sicily, territory that still belongs to Carthage, hoping the sheer size of the fleet convinces a few of those coastal cities to switch sides before this war goes any further. But the pilots on that fleet know something the consuls don't want to hear. This stretch of coast has no harbors, none at all, and if the weather turns, there is nowhere to run the ships for shelter. And it's the middle of July, the exact window in the sailing calendar every experienced captain in the Mediterranean knows to avoid, because this is when the worst storms hit, fastest and without much warning. The pilots tell the consuls all of this, directly before the fleet ever turns toward that coastline. And here's the crazy part. The consuls hear every word of it and sail toward the coast anyway, confident that a fleet this size has nothing left to fear from anyone, including the weather. Their own pilots told them in advance exactly what was coming and where, and they sailed into it anyway, just to put on a show for a few cities that might not have even switched sides. That's the moment the warning stopped being a maybe. If you're not subscribed yet, this is exactly the kind of story we dig up every week. Back to the water, where the sky over that fleet is already starting to change color. By the time the fleet is committed to that route, there's no version of this where they turn back easily. 400 warships don't reverse course on a whim, not with a couple thousand rescued soldiers crammed onto captured Carthaginian ships, not with a coastline behind them just as exposed as the one in front. For a day or two, nothing happens. The sea stays calm, the sun stays out, and the coastline slides by empty and quiet, cliffs and scrubland with no sign of a harbor anywhere along it. If anything, that calm makes the whole fleet more confident, not less. 400 ships moving together, nothing on the horizon but open water and a coastline that isn't fighting back. And there's another problem nobody on that fleet is thinking about. Every one of those warships still has a Corvus bolted to its bow, a heavy iron spike and plank boarding device Rome invented years earlier to turn sea battles into infantry fights. It works great against enemy ships. It's murder on balance. All that extra weight sitting high on the front of the hull makes every ship in the fleet less stable in open water than it looks, especially loaded down with rescued soldiers and captured cargo they never had space to properly redistribute. Therefore, when the sky finally breaks somewhere between the town of Camarina and the point at Cape Passaro, there's nowhere to hide from it. No harbor to duck into, no time to fix the balance below decks, just a wall of open water, a fleet already top-heavy, and a storm exactly as violent as the pilots said it would be. The storm doesn't hit one section of the fleet. It hits all of it at once, along miles of open coastline with nowhere to run. Ships capsize in open water, others get driven sideways into the rocks and come apart plank by plank, the sound of splitting timber carrying over the wind. Men who survived the initial wreck are thrown into water thick with debris, broken oars, shattered hull sections, torn sailcloth, and hundreds of other people fighting the exact same current they are, some of them still in armor, sinking before anyone can reach them. The air tastes like salt and pitch and smoke from cook fires that never got put out before the ships went down. Ancient historian Polybius, writing about this roughly a century later, called it the worst naval disaster he had ever recorded, and he'd studied plenty of them by then. Ancient sources disagree on exactly how many ships went down, some counting closer to 280, others well past 300, but every account agrees on the shape of it. Nearly the entire fleet gone in an afternoon. Out of a fleet that size, historians today put the death toll at somewhere over 100,000 people. Soldiers, rowers, the very survivors. This whole rescue mission had been sent across the Mediterranean to save. 100,000 people is hard to picture, so picture this instead. That's something like 70 Titanics worth of lives, lost in one storm in one afternoon. Off a coastline, 300 sailors begged their own commanders not to sail past in the first place. Think about that for a second. Some of these men survived Regulus's capture in Africa. They survived a Carthaginian siege at Aspis with nothing to eat. They survived a naval battle just to get evacuated. And then they die anyway in a storm 300 experienced sailors warned Rome about in plain language days before it happened. Rome doesn't quit. Within a year, they build 220 new warships from scratch and put a navy back in the water. A genuinely staggering effort for a state that just lost most of its fleet and 100,000 men in one afternoon. But one detail from this disaster never comes back with it. The Corvus, the device that helped Rome win almost every naval fight up to this point in the war, disappears completely from the historical record after this storm. No Roman ship is ever recorded using one again. Roughly 80 ships out of that entire fleet make it home to Italy. Even today, historians studying ancient disasters still point back to this storm as the deadliest single day at sea in recorded history by a wide margin. A record that has stood for more than 2,000 years and shows no sign of being broken. Rome tells the story afterward as a tragedy of the sea. Bad luck. A storm nobody could have predicted. That's not what happened, and it was never what happened. The men who actually knew that water told Rome's commanders exactly what was coming, in exactly the season it was coming, on exactly the coastline it would hit hardest. Rome just decided a show of force off a coastline that wasn't even fully theirs mattered more than listening to the people who knew better. I'm Zombo. If you made it this far, you're already part of the quest. Subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.